Here is the young gentleman. How do you do, sir?' This salutation was addressed to Mr Chuckster, who, with his hat extremely on one side, and his hair a long way beyond it, came swaggering up the walk. 'Hope I see you well, sir,' returned that gentleman. 'Hope I see YOU well, ma'am. Charming box this, sir. Delicious country, to be sure.' 'You want to take Kit back with you, I find,' observed Mr Garland. 'I have got a chariot cab waiting on purpose,' replied the clerk. 'A very spanking grey in that cab, sir, if you're a judge of horseflesh.' Declining to inspect the spanking grey, on the plea that he was but poorly acquainted with such matters and would but imperfectly appreciate his beauties, Mr Garland invited Mr Chuckster to partake of a slight repast in the way of lunch. That gentleman readily consenting, certain cold viands, flanked with ale and wine, were speedily prepared for his refreshment. At this repast, Mr Chuckster exerted his utmost abilities to enchant his entertainers and impress them with a conviction of the mental superiority of those who dwelt in town, with which view he led the discourse to the small scandal of the day, in which he was justly considered by his friends to shine prodigiously. Thus he was in a condition to relate the exact circumstances of the difference between the Marquis of Misler and Lord Bobby, which it appeared originated in a disputed bottle of champagne, and not in a pigeon pie, as erroneously reported in the newspapers. Neither had Lord Bobby said to the Marquis of Misler, 'Misler, one of us two tells a lie, and I'm not the man,' as incorrectly stated by the same authorities, but 'Misler, you know where I'm to be found, and damme, sir, find me if you want me,' which, of course, entirely changed the aspect of this interesting question, and placed it in a very different light. He also acquainted them with the precise amount of the income guaranteed by the Duke of Thigsbury to Violetta Stetter of the Italian Opera, which it appeared was payable quarterly, and not half yearly, as the public had been given to understand, and which was exclusive, and not inclusive, as had been monstrously stated, of jewellery, perfumery, hair powder for 5 footmen, and 2 daily changes of kid gloves for a page. Having entreated the old lady and gentleman to set their minds at rest on these absorbing points, for they might rely on his statement being the correct one, Mr Chuckster entertained them with theatrical chit-chat and the court circular, and so wound up a brilliant and fascinating conversation which he had maintained alone and without any assistance whatever for upwards of 3/4 of an hour. 'And now that the nag has got his wind again,' said Mr Chuckster, rising in a graceful manner, 'I'm afraid I must cut me stick.' Neither Mr nor Mrs Garland offered any opposition to his tearing himself away, feeling no doubt that such a man could ill be spared from his proper sphere of action, and therefore Mr Chuckster and Kit were shortly afterwards upon their way to town, Kit being perched upon the box of the cabriolet beside the driver, and Mr Chuckster seated in solitary state inside, with one of his boots sticking out at each of the front windows. When they reached the notary's house, Kit followed into the office, and was desired by Mr Abel to sit down and wait, for the gentleman who wanted him had gone out, and perhaps might not return for some time. This anticipation was strictly verified, for Kit had had his dinner, and his tea, and had read all the lighter matter in the law list and the post office directory, and had fallen asleep a great many times before the gentleman whom he had seen before came in, which he did at last in a very great hurry. He was closeted with Mr Witherden for some little time, and Mr Abel had been called in to assist at the conference, before Kit, wondering very much what he was wanted for, was summoned to attend them. 'Christopher,' said the gentleman, turning to him directly he entered the room, 'I have found your old master and young mistress.'
'No, sir. Have you though?' returned Kit, his eyes sparkling with delight. 'Where are they, sir? How are they, sir? Are they near here?'
'A long way from here,' returned the gentleman, shaking his head, 'but I am going away to-night to bring them back, and I want you to go with me.'
'Me, sir?'
cried Kit, full of joy and surprise. 'The place,' said the strange gentleman, turning thoughtfully to the notary, 'indicated by this man of the dogs is how far from here? 60 miles?' 'From 60 to 70. If we travel post all night, we shall reach there in good time tomorrow morning. Now the only question is, as they will not know me, and the child, God bless her, would think that any stranger pursuing them had a design upon her grandfather's liberty, can I do better than take this lad, whom they both know and will readily remember, as an assurance to them of my friendly intentions?' 'Certainly not,' replied the notary. 'Take Christopher by all means.'
'I beg your pardon, sir,'
said Kit, who had listened to this discourse with a lengthening countenance,
'but if that's the reason, I'm afraid I should do more harm than good. Miss Nell, sir, she knows me and would trust in me, I'm sure. But oh, master, I don't know why, gentlemen, nobody does, would not bear me in his sight after he had been ill, and Miss Nell herself told me that I must not go near him or let him see me any more. I should spoil all that you were doing if I went, I'm afraid. I'd give the world to go, but you'd better not take me, sir.'
'Another difficulty!' cried the impetuous gentleman. 'Was ever man so beset as I? Is there nobody else that knew them? Nobody else in whom they had any confidence? Solitary as their lives were, is there no one person who would serve my purpose?'
'Is there, Christopher?' said the notary. 'Not one, sir,' replied Kit. 'Oh, yes, though. There's my mother.'
'Did they know her?' said the single gentleman.
'Know her, sir? Why, she was always coming backwards and forwards. They were as kind to her as they were to me. Bless you, sir, she expected they'd come back to her house.'
'Then where the devil is the woman?' said the impatient gentleman, catching up his hat. 'Why isn't she here? Why is that woman always out of the way when she is most wanted?' In a word, the single gentleman was bursting out of the office, bent upon laying violent hands on Kit's mother, forcing her into a post chaise, and carrying her off, when this novel kind of abduction was with some difficulty prevented by the joint efforts of Mr Abel and the notary, who restrained him by dint of their remonstrances, and persuaded him to sound Kit upon the probability of her being able and willing to undertake such a journey on so short a notice. This occasioned some doubts on the part of Kit, and some violent demonstrations on that of the single gentleman, and a great many soothing speeches on that of the notary and Mr Abel. The upshot of the business was, that Kit, after weighing the matter in his mind and considering it carefully, promised on behalf of his mother that she should be ready within 2 hours from that time to undertake the expedition, and engaged to produce her in that place, in all respects equipped and prepared for the journey, before the specified period had expired. Having given this pledge, which was rather a bold one and not particularly easy of redemption, Kit lost no time in sallying forth, and taking measures for its immediate fulfilment. Chapter 40.